Bring your hands to the center of your chest. Press your palms against each other and against your sternum. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Inhale to begin. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Inhale deeply. And exhale. Just to warm up a little bit, we're not going to do a lot of yoga this morning because we have a lot of ground to cover. But what we'll do is just get ourselves set for the class. So inhale like this with your hands towards the top, towards the sky. So inhale here, and you exhale down. Let's do just a couple of minutes of that. This will set our nervous system, relax. With this deep breath, let our mind start to get calmed so that we can start thinking about what we're going to talk today. Today I'm going to be talking about relationships and about the strength of man within the relationship. Because sometimes it feels kind of confusing what it is exactly that we need to do in a relationship as a man, right? There's no need to be confused. That's for the women. A few more times. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Satnam. Before I begin, I'm going to give you a yogic quiz. So when you're breathing a lot, are you putting more oxygen in your blood and that's why you start feeling a little bit woozy? Is that what's happening in our body? Have you ever thought of that as yogis? Yes? And what is it? What's the answer?
Getting used to a higher level of energy.
Well, I'm talking about the chemistry of it.
More CO2.
More CO2?
When I've been on pure oxygen, I don't feel woozy, I feel great.
Right. Actually, when we start breathing long and deep, we start depleting the CO2 of our blood. And what that does is that when the CO2 level of the blood stops or reduces, it starts constricting the flow of oxygen into the brain. And that's why we feel oozy. because our lungs require a certain amount of carbon dioxide inside. And if it's not there, it'll take it out of the blood to reestablish the balance in the blood in the lungs. Anyway, that's an interesting factoid. Well, today I'm going to be guiding you through this idea of manhood and relationships. Because, you know, it's kind of a very important topic for most men, if not all men. How do we relate to women? How to relate to this feminine part of this universe, ultimately? And it is kind of it's a question that I've asked myself for a long time, because I figured out, look, Yogi Bhajan came over and he taught, I don't know how many women's camps. He would spend with them months and months and months, year after year, year after year. And with us men, he just threw a little, you know, here and there. Never really concentrated much on us. And then he would come and say, well, women are 16 times stronger than me. You know, what the hell does that mean? You know, are you going to, a woman is 16 times stronger than me? And you know, I think that he was right on the money. Women are 16 times stronger than us. But you know, when women started listening to this back then, they thought, well, we don't need men. We're 16 times stronger than them. And a whole culture started developing in 3HO with women's camps and things like this. Like men, oh, they're like second-class citizens. Do you ever remember those days? Maybe? Yeah? I remember one time I was trapped in women's camp setting my wife's tent. In a certain hour, no man had to be in there. And it was just terrorizing. It was just like all these women looking at a virus, you know, that has walked into the camp. Because I'm just 16 times more weaker than them. And it was pretty intense. But let me tell you what I figured out throughout these years. Because he also said another thing that was very important. He says, men don't understand anything because only one side of their brain works. However, women that have both sides of their brains working, that's why they're confused all the time. So we're just like perfect for each other. We really need each other. A woman without the projection of a man is really a loose cannon. And I like to think about it like this. We have a rocket ship. And the liquid fuel in that rocket ship is this Adi Shakti energy. It is the power of this whole universe. And as the male principle of this universe, this raw power needs some direction. So under this idea, I like to think that us men are the guidance system. And you'd know that how long it took us to figure out, as rocket scientists, how to get this rocket from here to there without exploding and being able to guide it. It was a very sophisticated process. So now I like to think of us that we are probably weaker, but we also have to be more sophisticated. We have to have the capacity to be able to guide that raw Adi Shakti power and energy and hit the mark. And that is where most men are clueless. Most men do not, we really have some handicaps that do not let us do that. Some of them, we were born with them. You know, just what I told you, that we have only half of our brain, as the citizen self said. But others, we learned. You know, we were learned and we were taught in society about them. Over the years, I have really asked myself, why is it that it is so easy, so much easier to relate to women when you're teaching? Normally, more women come to class. More women are interested in coming and working in their own selves than men. Men tend to be, okay, well, you know, it's football night. I'm not going to sit down and do Satkriya. You know? what is happening? And then at the same time, I see misery. I travel quite a bit and teach quite a bit. And I see misery in every country, everywhere. And a lot of misery amongst men. Because there's a lack of comprehension of what a man is. And I've been asking myself for a long time, how can I pinpoint exactly what is it in man that is not letting man be a complete man? I've been really thinking about this for a long time, and and talking to a lot of people and counseling people. And finally, I think I hit it in the nail, at least in my way of looking at it, is that men are too busy bearing their emotions, not hearing and listening to their emotions. And when we don't do that, that is exactly the realm where the women are 16 times greater than us. While we as men try to figure out exactly what I'm feeling, our woman already knows what you're feeling. And you're trying to, she comes and says, what's wrong? Nothing. And you know that she knows what's wrong with you, but you're not willing to say or accept her help in identifying what's wrong with your emotion at that moment. She is 16 times more intuitive. She is 16 times more powerful in figuring out exactly what's wrong with you than what you are figuring out what's wrong with you. So I really think that part, or a big key to figuring out what is our strength as man, is to learn to deal with our emotions. Because, emotions are part of our primitive reptilian brain. They come from the limbic system, and they hold a humongous power over our brain, over our lives. If we don't have emotional stability, there's no way that we're going to be able to understand what it is to merge with God. Forget it. If we don't have emotional stability, there's no way that we can find a way to merge with a woman. If we don't have emotional stability, we're just going to be alone and, forgotten in some little corner of the universe. So even though it's challenging for us as men, to get in touch with our emotions, it is a very critical and worthwhile thing to do. Because I'll tell you how an emotion works. An emotion is an incredible amount of energy that is stored within yourself. And emotion, we know from Kundalini Yoga, that only has two alternatives. Either it becomes a commotion, or it becomes a devotion. And this decision of how to transform this emotion into a devotion is a conscious decision. It is not automatic. We need our intuition, we need our meditative mind, we need to develop ourselves to be able to do that switch and say, hey, stop this commotion, man. We have to find the way of converting this into devotion. That is why we do yoga, that is why we meditate, that is why we do all this. We don't go out and bury the emotion and suppress it and feel indifferent to it. Because in a marriage, in a relationship, the more we do that, the less access we have to have a true relationship, a true partnership with a woman. The more we suppress our own emotion, the more far away we are from our own soul. The way to our soul is not through suppressing our devotion. The way to a relationship is not by suppressing our emotion. On the contrary, it is grabbing that emotion and applying the alchemy of the wisdom of whatever wisdom you want, but in our case we use Kundalini Yoga. We grab that alchemy of Kundalini Yoga and of Sikh Dharma and convert that commotion into devotion. Hey man, but how does that work when my wife is throwing dishes at me? Okay, honey, let's just be very devoted. Crash! You know, here comes flying the I want to exemplify this. Let me give you an example of a relationship that worked like this. And it's very common. There's a man and a woman that seem to be having a good relationship for many years. And suddenly out of the blue, this guy goes and he goes with a younger woman. Have you ever heard this story?
First time.
Now let me do a multiple quiz here. Why does he go with a younger woman? Because of sex? Or because of emotion? Or because of ego?
All three of them.
Well, there's one that prevails.
Ego.
Well, ego can be the cause. I mean, but no, it's emotion. You know? You know, the reason, you know, why would a man, just think about this, why would a man that's been in a committed relationship for a long time suddenly abandon his wife, his children, his place in society? Because have you noticed what happens to men that do this to women? They have to go to another universe. You know, this universe does not accept them anymore. This universe of community of women just sort of circle around each other and they don't let the Indians come in. Have you seen this phenomenon? Why, as a man, would you subject yourself to this? You know, to losing, you know, your position in society, losing the love of your family, not to mention losing half of your wealth because you have to share with your ex-wife. You know, and out of that half of your wealth, you know, a third you have to share with the lawyer. Why would anybody do this?
Who's also a woman.
Huh?
The lawyer is also a woman.
The lawyer is also. I think that most of the time, when I've seen this, the reason is because the emotional well-being of the man has not been tended to, and he finds a better emotional state with another woman. Briefly. But he doesn't know that because you're still in love, you know, you're still in this infatuation stage. And for the first year or two, it feels really cool, you know. You've changed models, you know, you can show her off with your friends or do whatever you want. But the price that you pay is really an incredible amount of prana that you lose doing that. Why would we do that if the alternative is so much more beautiful? The alternative is to have a relationship with a woman where every single day that passes, we have a deeper relationship with her. We have a deeper understanding of what woman is. And in the process, we understand deeper what the meaning of man and manhood is. See, because contrary to popular belief, manhood is not this idea that, wow, man, I'm supposed to be spreading my seed across the nation, you know? In Mexico, where I come from, it's very common to see a man that has the big house, which is his regular wife, and he has several small houses, you know, with other women in other places, in different towns. And he's got a lot of fun doing that, or so he thinks. But the price that you pay for doing this is that you have a very superficial understanding of who you are, a very superficial experience of who you are, and you have no access to the depth of your own soul. Being in a committed relationship with a woman, it is a golden opportunity to establish a profound and deep relationship with your own self. Because the woman will challenge you. The woman will, you know, remember Yogi Ji said that a woman is always a why if. She's always, why? if, why, if. She's always constantly questioning you. And she says, a woman that is not testing a man once a day is not a woman. And a man that does not pass that exam once a day is not a man. Right? So you have to really be on your, on your feet, because these exams that women put on you are, sometimes our male brain doesn't even understand the question. So, but let me tell you the one thing you should not do. And that is that when you don't understand the question, or you're being confronted by the woman, the one thing you should not do is to keep quiet. And that is normally the one thing we do. Right? The moment that you get into an emotional distress, or you don't understand what's going on, you go into yourself and get quiet. And she goes berserk. You can just not relate for her for 5 days or 6 days, and she just goes into hyperventilation, Then she says, well, I don't feel connected with my man. I hear that all the time. Well, why don't you feel connected with him? He doesn't want to talk to me. What do you want to talk to him about? I want to talk to him about my emotions. Well, what if he doesn't want to talk about your emotions? Then I'm not connected to him. And it goes into this cycle of lack of communication. So even if it's not your domain, you have to trust, because here's a very important thing. You have to trust your woman that she's not going to abuse you for opening up your incapacity to express emotions. In other words, it is okay to let yourself be guided by a woman that is sane, a woman that is in a committed relationship with you, where you can have a conversation where her confrontation, her words, can bring clarity to your own emotions. Closing the door is not the solution. Stopping communication is not the solution in most cases. I'm talking about dealing with a sane woman. Hari Singh is thinking something else.
Key word there was sane woman. Is there a meter for that or anything? You can just check. Is she sane? Is she insane? Where do we get the meter that tells us, if she's sane or not? Radio Shack. Julia Hyde.
What happens when she says, I'm just being honest? I'm
What?
not being abusive, I'm just being honest.
Who? Your woman or you?
The woman, because that's a typical.
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very interesting question, because whenever you are using the truth to be very blunt and to hurt somebody, then it becomes a lie. And in a little while, we're going to talk about compassion and what that means, because compassion is a big part of this. In a regular relationship, in a healthy relationship, there is space for this conversation to happen. And it is okay for the man to come and say, look, I am feeling pissed off because of this and this and this. But you cannot blame her for being pissed off. That is one of the key questions. You have decided to get pissed off with her, which is different. There might be reasons and there might be triggers that put you in this position. But in the language of emotions, emotions are a decision. Remember, bringing consciousness to emotions is exactly this. You are bringing light to the emotion and you're saying, I am responsible for this emotion. The fact that you did this triggered in me anger. I just want to bring this up to you. It is not your fault that I am angry. It is not that idea. Let's talk this over. You know. So that is a whole dynamic that can happen within the relationship. An honest conversation does not mean a blunt and truthful and hurtful conversation. An honest conversation in a relationship has to be a compassionate and truthful conversation. It has to be kind and truthful, not hurtful and truthful. When you use truth to convert it into pain and to get your point across, then it is a competition. The moment that we start competing with our wives or with our significant other, and the moment that we start to try to figure out who is coming on top, that's the first moment that we start to lose in the relationship. The relationship is a union of two different polarities. We are a partner in this project. In coming together, we are both going to learn, we're both going to grow, we're both going to find what trust is. We will both find a way to understand through compassion. And if we have that commitment, then we can work through things out. It doesn't matter how difficult it is. If I put myself in the position that this is my world and you might participate in it or not, these are the conditions, goodbye. And that is the language of being separate. When a relationship is really the science and the alchemy of becoming one, of becoming together. Ultimately, that is why Yogi Ji said that matrimony and marriage is the ultimate yoga. Forget Kundalini yoga in terms of ultimate. When it really gets real is in your relationship. And as men, we have to own that. We cannot suppress that. Once I was counseling a couple, and the woman had been a little bit loony, acting. And his reaction was to go out and meditate. So by the time we were talking to each other, he was meditating 8 hours a day. And she came and said, look, I have to go in the middle of his South Korea and say, hey, we need to pay the bills. Wake up. She was going even more berserk. Because the guy was just meditating. And you would talk to him, and he says, she just creates hell for me. I'm just going to be out there. I don't want to relate to her. Do you want to create a relationship with her? No, I don't care. No connection. You can choose that. You can choose to escape. And in that case, meditation is escape. You use meditation as an excuse to get away from hell. You can only get away from hell when you bring hell within yourself and cool it off with compassion. Period. You cannot escape it. Right? Can you repeat that? You can only bring hell into yourself and cool it with compassion. So by that time, he had been meditating so much that he was totally spaced out. He didn't want to relate to her. And we went through I don't know how many sessions, and I said, look, do you understand that your opportunity for this lifetime is to relate through your wife, not through your meditation? Do you understand that you have to figure out how to live this life with her so that that relationship with her forces you to come down to earth, to face hell and cool off hell? No, that's not it. I just need to meditate in the Nam. Bye. He insisted, and he insisted, and he insisted. He wanted to keep totally escaped. Keep meditating. Is there a possibility of that relationship going anywhere? Is there a possibility of that yogi doing that to merge with God? Is there?
Well, I'm sure there is. Like that one chance.
Right.
Alone.
You can't make it alone. You can't go and unite yourself with something if you're the only one. You know, God created duality so that duality can unite with Himself. So women represent duality. Women represent, this feminine energy of Adi Shakti, represent this universe, this energy of this universe. If God just wanted us to get spaced out, He wouldn't have had to create the whole universe. If He didn't want us to have this game between the polarities of men and women, there would be no universe. There would be no evolution. There would be no one dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, like Guru Singh said yesterday. We wouldn't have had to go through the tree. We wouldn't have had to be a rock. Because we were already united. But that would have been extremely boring. No challenge, no learning, no evolution. Can you imagine a world like that? Do we want to go into that space of not doing that? No, we don't. We don't want to escape. As men, we need to be strong. And our strength starts when we take those emotions and those hells that we see outside and we bring them inside of us and we grab the alchemy and the wisdom of these teachings and convert that into devotion. Not by running away. It's by confronting the monster. Isn't that what in the old days heroes used to do? The hero needed to leave his house, slay a dragon, conquer the princess, and come back home. Was that the story? The hero that doesn't go and doesn't want to face a dragon is not a man. Period. A hero that doesn't go slay the dragon before he goes with a woman doesn't get the princess. Right? Because he's not a man. He doesn't know how to slay the dragon. What woman wants a man that doesn't know how to slay the dragon? What woman wants a man that doesn't know how to go in there and penetrate and solve the problem? Deliver, give, do, give direction. This guidance, this missile guiding system is this idea that you have this precision, you have this clarity, and you're going to say, I'm going here, honey, follow me. That is what will provide the security to women and will bring a lot of blessings to your life.
Sorry, can you repeat that from this? The last point.
That when you have that security, when you know exactly what you're doing and you have this security and you transmit it to the woman, you say, this is where we're going, Don't get confused anymore. This is what's happening. As a man, that is the principle of man. This is our guidance system as a man. We can say, we're going there, follow me, and she will feel secure. Now the question is, if we're fools and we're making dumb decisions all the time, how long is she going to follow us? Right? That is where we need to be wise. This is where we need to learn what it is to be a man. Because we have a lot of different models of being a man. A very foolish model is to be a macho man. In Latin America, it is just an ultimate model of being a man. In Mexico, there's songs and songs and songs of, I'm so macho, I don't need you, I'm going to close the door in front of your face, type of song. And you know what? These men are totally miserable. The only other alternative they have is to drink. So the songs have to do about betrayal, I don't care for you, I'm going to take the bottle, and the bottle is my friend. There's thousands of songs like that. And this is the culture. This is the ultimate result of macho, the macho model. But we all have something to do with this macho model because it's prevalent throughout the world in lesser or greater degrees. And this is where I was talking about how we reinforce this macho model. Have you ever, do you remember, or did it ever happen to you that you were like 5 years old and you started crying and your dad or your mom said, "Boys, little boys don't cry"? Remember that? That's the beginning of a macho model. This idea that little boys don't cry. It is you're telling the boy, do not relate to your emotions. Suppress your emotions, be a man, get yourself together, pick yourself up, and go do whatever you need to do. That's how we were all brought up, right? And if we did not follow that model, we felt inadequate as men. Because some of us here, and probably all of us, at some point figured out that this model doesn't work. That in actuality, this idea of simply suppressing my doubts and my insecurities and my yearnings and all this did not work. So we looked for a solution to this. That's why every one of you that is sitting here is here because of that. Because we're not content in just becoming, the regular macho, Budweiser drinking, buddy buddies, tribal guy, right? Because we've probably been there. We've probably felt that doesn't really give us much. We probably felt that is just kind of superficial alternative. And we wanted to figure out more. That does not give us depth. That does not give us, that doesn't bring meaning to our life. That doesn't give us, the possibility to merge with the opposite sex. So in this process, let's do a little meditation. And this meditation we're going to do is a meditation to open up the heart center. The heart center is that third level of chakra where the emotion, when you open the heart center, the emotion is no longer suppressed. You're allowed to feel your emotion. We need our emotion. And I'll tell you one little secret. Emotion is a big component of intuition. So when you hear the Citizen Sub talking about being intuitive, an emotion that is directed and it is conscious and it is applied is essential for us to have intuition. Intuition is not just, I'm going to get information from the ethers. And how do you get this information through your ethers? Through your heart. And how does your heart speak? Through emotions. Have you had that experience? So if you keep suppressing emotions, you're suppressing intuition. Does that make sense? So let's allow ourselves to start feeling this process of emotion. So please come sitting in rock pose. So we're going to extend our hands like this, palms facing down, and our gaze is going to be in the tip of the nose. And this meditation is in silence. I'm going to put hummy hum, brahm hum. But in this, you're going to be perfectly silent. And you're just going to be bringing the hands to the front like this. Let me see, I think it's, you're bringing the hands like this and extending them like that. So set yourself, fix your concentration on the tip of your nose, eyes 1/10 closed, and let's begin. The breathing will become automatic. As you move the arms forward, you slowly start pressing the navel point in. And then when you open your arms, you slowly release the navel point. So you're connecting your navel point with your fourth chakra. Bring energy, bring power to that fourth chakra. Really pull that navel point in as you bring the arms in. Control your movement. Observe how your emotional body is reacting at this point. tip of the nose, pulling the navel point as you bring your arms together, and releasing your navel point gradually as you extend your arms. Start visualizing those emotions that you have that do not allow you to go forward. And bring them from the navel point to the heart. Those emotions that you have suppressed throughout your life, let them rise, let them come, recognize them, see them, observe them, feel them, and honor them. Emotions that you might even not be aware that are there, bring them up in whatever form, in whatever image comes to you. Bring them into your heart center. In the heart center, observe them with compassion. Not with the mind, but with compassion of the heart. Every single one of those emotions came to your life to wake you up, to make you whole, to give you the opportunity to go beyond the ego-based life. Honor those emotions. Bring them to your heart. Let the breath do its work. It's okay to open the lid of these emotions that have been suppressed through all your life or years. It's a cesspool. Bring it out and let's use it as fertilizer. It will take you to a new level of understanding when you can convert all these emotions into devotion. Come on, we're almost there. Bring it up. Let it flow. Let it come to the surface. Let the mantra carry it. Give it to God. Say thank you, emotion that's been stuck there. Thank you for everything you've given me, for all the understanding, for all the challenge. I don't need you anymore. You can go back. You don't need to keep ruling my subconscious. You're not my master anymore. My heart and my compassion are my masters. Everything that has angered you, everything that has frustrated you, everything that has made you feel small and belittled, any feeling of inferiority, any feeling, any emotion that has contributed to your suffering, it is the time to bring it up, to transform it into gold, into food for that tree. Come on. Last seconds. Keep up. Save yourself the therapy. Save yourself the grief. Save yourself the suffering. Use the power of the heart center, of the shabad, of the sound, of the nod. Elevate it. Convert it into devotion. Now. Inhale deeply. Extend your arms. Feel your heart free, light, beautiful, radiant, beating with the heart of the universe, synchronized with no lack, safe, beautiful. Exhale. Inhale again. Bring your chest out and show the world the power of your compassion, the power of your heart. Exhale. Last time, inhale. And give it all to the infinite. Exhale. Bring your hands down. And lastly, let's just shake it up. Shake, shake. Anything that is remaining there, let it go. Shake your body, your arms, your legs, your hips. Stand up if you want. Do whatever. 1 minute. Shake, shake, shake for 1 minute. "20 seconds of shaking. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Great job. How was that? And you would like to share some? Anybody would like to say, share, question, ask? Yes.
I think it's really far out how good this stuff works. It just, to bring everything up, the pulling of the navel coming in, gave me such a sensation of opening the letting all my crap come up, all of those what about me and blah, 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 blah. And then when you spoke to us once or twice to burn it up at the heart and to bring it into that compassionate space, it was very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Do you think women know on a deep level
Yeah. That's in their DNA. So let's talk about a little bit about compassion. So I hope that up to now I've convinced you that it is not a good idea to suppress your emotion. Are you convinced of that? Are you as a man willing to face your emotions? Are you willing to face your fear head on? There's no other way forward. We have to face our fear, our frustration, everything else. We have to face it. You know, that is the beginning of the strength of a man. In the old days, men had this incredible capacity of, or we've been programmed because of evolution, to be able to go out and walk for 5 days without food and, you know, being injured and then walking back with half a foot and things like that of manlyhood as understood in the past. And we've been able to do that by suppressing and by becoming insensitive to certain parts. And it was a requirement. We needed that. But that doesn't work anymore. The wounds that we have today don't have to do with us carrying a deer across half a valley. We're not fighting lions. We're fighting a much more sophisticated battle. It's a battle that we're fighting in the intellect, in the heart, in society, in a strong competition with other fellow human beings. It is a battle that is shaping us in many different ways. So the challenges that we're facing as men today are very different from the challenges that we were faced before. In a sense, it was easier before because it was quite easily defined what a man had to do. Go out and get the food and come back. End of story. You know? Go, explore, conquer, do, and then come back. So we had all these values of heroism and battle heroes and warriors. And today, the line is really not that clear because the battles are many times fought in the court, not with a sword. So where does all my energy go? Where does all my manly, protective, out there and go energy come from? Or what do I do with it? You know what I've seen, and it is my personal opinion, that in general, men today are a lot worse off than women. There is a lack of there is a general lack in society of understanding what manhood is. There's very little clues of what manhood is. And I really believe that it's up to us to figure out that up. We have the tools to understand exactly what the new man looks like. We can't be the old man. We are evolving. We are men that we have to deal with this fifth dimension that Guru Singh was talking about yesterday. When we were men dealing with the third dimension, it was very clear what had to be done. But when we're dealing with the fifth dimension, where everything has to do with a different level of subtlety and a different set of skills, most men are clueless. Especially if, you know, we just follow the regular models of manhood. The regular models of manhood do not work. Those are a base, and we have to honor that part in ourselves. There's things that we are still valid. We still have to be courageous. We still have to deal with our own stuff. We still have to have strength. We have to have all those things. But we have to understand that it's not only about spreading our seed. It is about also spreading our soul in the touch and the light that our soul has. And for that, we need to be real and we need to be authentic. We have to bring into ourselves all those different fragments that we have flying around our psyche that do not let us be who we are today, now. You know how Guru Singh wrote this put this chart with all these fragments flying around. Remember that chart yesterday, a beautiful chart? That is how most of the time we are. We're just different fragments. Right now I'm this identical identity. A little while ago I was that identical identity. Where is me? Where is my manhood? Where is my identity as a man? Women have figured out they're a little bit ahead of us, because what they have done is that through Women's Lib and these movements, they have gone into areas where men before used to be the sole it was man's domain, into work, into the military, into being going out there. And the moment that man sees women come in to this realm that was sacred to men, then man says, well, my man world is gone. It also belongs to women now. Where do I go? What do I do with myself? In some places it's so dramatic that men are being castrated. Like in the northern European countries. Women have this monopoly over power now in the discourse, in the cultural discourse, saying testosterone is the mother of all evils. So all the little boys are being taught that do not exert your manliness, do not be a man, because testosterone only brings war, and it brings this and that and competition. And the result is high suicide rates. Men in those northern countries are totally confused on what their role is. The family has fallen apart. People do not even get married. Everything is expendable. I go out with a woman today, have sex with her, and the only right I have to have sex with her is because I invited her to eat tonight. Then after that session is over, everybody goes back to their apartment, and the next day the same story. Everything is lost in that process. Any possibility to have any profundity about the self-experience is lost. Any possibility of finding who I am and who I am by my own self is lost in that process. One of the places where I see this most is when I see men that are incapable of committing. For us men, it's a problem to be committed. In our DNA, as men, we always want to have a plan B to escape to. I recognize that. For example, with my wife, the moment that I really get really stressed out when I have to plan. Like say that I have to go to men's camp. I really want to keep that decision to the last minute. It is just part of me. And if I have to buy a plane ticket 3 months in advance, it stresses me out. Because that means that at a certain space and time, I'm going to be limited to being in that tin can flying in the sky, But I recognize that, so I have to work around it. I have to use the tools that I need, because otherwise the plane ticket is going to be quite expensive. Right? So how do I bring this into a coherent storyline now in this modern time? How do I keep my options open and at the same time being committed? How does that happen? Why would I want to do that? It's very popular. It's very popular in the popular culture that says, well, as soon as you're married, you're in prison. You're stuck. On the contrary, really, that special relationship, that marriage that you have with somebody else, it is not a prison. It is actually the doorway to togetherness. It is the doorway to intimacy. It is the doorway to your own soul. If we just use women and we do not get committed and we do not follow this, we go nowhere. We don't get anywhere. So it's really about making a conscious decision. Do we want to live an egocentric life, or we want to live a soul-centric life? And therein lies the central question. If we go into the ego-centered life, we're going to be acting just like a regular man, reacting to his DNA in every corner in every situation that he is confronting. Which means that under that scheme, I'm going to feel like I'm the one that's controlling the whole universe. And at the same time, since I'm controlling what's happening in the universe, I'm the one that's responsible for the consequences of that action. And if I'm responsible for those consequences, and if those consequences are not good, I'm carrying a huge load on my back of all the stupid things that I did in the past. What do I do with that? Well, I can blame others. I can blame circumstances. I can say, I am not a successful person because back in 1995, I had the opportunity to be the founder of Microsoft, but Bill Gates beat me to it. We can create all types of little stories to ourselves. We can justify, our mind has this incredible capacity to justify our shortcomings. And everything that is created by our ego is a shortcoming, by definition. Because it has no sustenance. It has no roots. It is just transitory, temporary. So think about all those situations in your life that you're operating out of your egocentric mode. And think of it as just transitory. That is going to go away, just like the Guru says. Sooner or later, you're going to face death. And what are you going to say? Hey, wait. I forgot my Mercedes-Benz. No. In the relationship between a man and a woman, the man has, we were talking about the emotions. The woman is much more versatile in emotions. She can identify emotions. She can work with emotions. She can get really emotional. Women are equally emotional, but we tend to be insensitive to those emotions for one reason only. Because if we apply our intuitive mind and our meditative mind to the emotion, then we become very clear on how to go through the emotion to make it devotion. It is much more difficult for a woman that is swimming in this sea of emotion to see the way forward in the middle of it. I'm not saying they can't, but it's more challenging for them. So we both have our positives and our negatives, our challenges and our virtues, and how do we proceed forward. When I'm living an egocentric life, I'm vulnerable to my own actions. I'm vulnerable to the game of my mind. I'm vulnerable to the consequences of all my actions. And I have to carry all this stuff. So many times I don't want to be vulnerable, so I make things up. I make different identities. I make different stories. I tell myself different stories. Like how about the victim story? I didn't do this. I'm not successful, or I haven't been able to do this because of this. Yogi Bhajan was about not being a victim. And if you felt like a victim in front of him, he would make sure that you felt even more of a victim until you could not stand it anymore and let go of your victimhood. Isn't that right? He would just find it like a radar, and he would just go to it. And he would try to victimize you more. That was one of his techniques.
Forget to try. He would just do it.
Until you got your scene together and you said, okay, I am not the victim, sir. Sorry. Until you had that enough of you, that enough manhood to stand to him and say, I'm not the victim, sir. And then he would just back off. Says, you understood now. He would be happy. That's the role of a teacher. The role of a teacher is exactly to do that. To figure out where your weakness is and zero in on that weakness and make sure that it gets covered. Make sure that you, within your own self, find a way of covering for that weakness. So whenever you're feeling betrayed, whenever you're feeling angry, whenever you're feeling frustrated, just remember, zero in on it just like he would. And stay present with that frustration and with that anger, because all those emotions are just emotions that are coming from the ego. And everything that is coming from the ego is transitory, including that betrayal, including that anger, including that frustration. The alternative that we have in Kundalini Yoga is that we get into our meditative mind. And as soon as we start getting into meditative mind, the ego starts to dissolve, and it's no longer the central driver of my life. And there happens to be a vacuum. What happens there where my ego used to be? What's going to be driving my life now? Now that I'm not the one that is going out and getting things, and manipulating things and controlling things, what is going to be controlling? What is going to be manipulating? How are things going to be manifested? And this is a very central question for us as men, because normally as men we are asked to deliver. We're asked to bring the bread home. So to do this, first of all, we have to allow ourselves to be. And once we allow ourselves to be, our soul begins to be the guide. Our intuition begins to be the guide. And instead of being an egocentric, ego-powered life, it becomes a soul, a higher self-powered process. And it is so much beautiful. Because at the moment that you do that, you're not carrying the whole load. You have help. You don't feel isolated from the universe. The universe is with you. The universe is you. Because in that space of meditative mind, it is a space where you're not separated from the whole, which is the principle and the main lie that the ego tells us. This idea that we're separated. That's the biggest lie that ego tells us. The biggest truth that our soul tells us is that we are not separated, that we're united with everything. And as soon as we let the ego go, as soon as we open up this beautiful space and we allow it to happen, our soul that whispers, our soul that is subtle, begins to be heard. And as it begins to be heard, a new reality begins to emerge in our consciousness. And this reality that begins to emerge in our consciousness when it has to do with emotions is that there's a different way of dealing with it, and that is through compassion. So let's talk a little bit about compassion. Because for a lot of men, compassion means weakness. You get that sense sometimes? That compassion is weakness? For us in the Khalsa, compassion means strength. Because without compassion, which is a quality that comes from the soul, we are weak. there's no way we can deal with our emotions. There's no way that we can deal with other people. There's no way we can deal with pain and suffering without compassion. Without compassion, we have to carry the whole load ourselves in our backpack. We have to carry the load of, the pain that my parents created, and the pain that I created, and the guilt that I created, and all these other things. We're carrying it in this backpack, and it's very heavy. The only way to get rid of it is compassion. Compassion is also not a passive thing, which is another misconception about compassion. We think, oh, I'm going to be compassionate with you. I'm just going to let you be. I'm going to pray for you. Bye. That is one way of compassion, but compassion is actionable. Compassion has a dimension. It has a projection. It can be projected. It can manifest. It can be assertive. Many times when I was listening to the Siri Singh Sahib, whenever he would do something, my mind would go into say, okay, well, that was really mean, sir. Or I could go in my mind and say, well, that was really compassionate, sir. It was my choice how to interpret that. As I learned to interpret his actions and saying, okay, sir, this was not mean, this was compassionate. I don't understand it, but I will give you the benefit of the doubt. I trust that you did this out of compassion. Then you started looking at it, at the whole process, and started understanding that he used to have, I would call it assertive compassionate, right? He was very assertive and he was compassionate. He could grab a bat, break it in your head, and it was a very compassionate act. He could also tell you a beautiful word and a great inspiration, and that was a very compassionate act. A man is somebody that knows how to wield the sword of compassion.
I think that's the biggest fallacy, is confusing compassion with weakness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's where we struggle as men, trying to move into that space of compassion,
Yeah.
leaving behind our manliness, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that balance of being a man but yet being compassionate and still holding steady to that
Mm-hmm.
state of manliness.
It's an interesting thing, but I like to see it like this. And this is a higher way of looking at what, for men, being territorial is important. Compassionate can also be territorial. And instead of calling it territorial, I'm going to say boundaries. I think compassion needs to have boundaries. And because in a relationship, to be compassionate in a relationship, like when I'm with my significant other, the space of compassion that we have between each other has definite boundaries. Just to give you one. In that sacred space of relationship between her and me, we're not going to insult each other. There's a boundary for you, about a compassionate boundary. I will not allow you to destroy yourself. That I will not participate, because it's not for me to allow you or not. But I am not going to participate in your self-destruction. That is another big boundary that you can set up in compassion. So you can go to somebody and say, look, I really feel your pain. I know that you're suffering, that you have gone through a lot. Okay? But going out and doing crazy stuff, that is not the way. You have your right, it's your life, do it. But here's the word, I have my heart open to you. Come to me, But the rules that are going to apply when you and I relate are these. We do that in 3HO. Our compassionate boundary is, you come to solstice, but you're not allowed to bring drugs. You're not allowed to smoke. You're not allowed to drink. Not because it's a rule in a mythology or it's a dogma that we hate people that smoke and drink. No, it's because we're creating a space of compassion where we are defining how that is. In that space of compassion has no room for self-destruction. This is a concept that I find that women have a lot of trouble, wrapping their head around it and then putting into practice. Because a mother is sort of programmed to just cover for the child for whatever he's doing. So even if the child needs to be, limited, put some boundaries on the child, women are not really programmed to do that very well. And this is the father energy, the father figure is our capacity to cut through all that emotionality and use that emotion and convert it into compassion. We as men have a much bigger capacity to be able to set the boundaries and say, okay, this is how this is going to play. This is how we're going to play in this field. Does it make sense? So I as a man, the strength of me as a man in compassion is to be able to set those boundaries where the experience of infinity can happen. Those boundaries where the everything can happen, basically, when it comes to totality. Yes.
How come women don't know how to set boundaries? What is it about them?
I'm not going to say that they don't know, because some women can. And when I'm talking about these, I'm talking about the feminine and masculine principles. We're all a combination of men and women. In men, there's women that know very well how to establish boundaries, especially you go to a good school teacher, and she's mastered that art. But in other areas, one of the reasons that women have more trouble figuring out the boundaries is because they tend to follow more their emotions. So it's not, oh, poor him, give him a chance. No, honey. He has not played by the rules. He has to pay the consequences. Let him have the consequences. Let him learn what he needs to learn. And we will open the door over here so he comes in after he learns. For instance. But a mother wants to hug, come here, I'll take care of you, my son. That's her nature. That's a motherly nature. It's a different, yes.
What were some of the things, I'm sure through your marriage that you've gone through one hell of a evolution. Would I be correct to assume that? That since the time of your marriage until now, you've both grown and you've both developed.
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges you faced in the early periods that you think are pretty universal for most people?
Well, I'm going to take a rain check on that. Because I have really been blessed. I've been married for 30 years. And I really haven't had any trouble with my marriage. For me it's been a beautiful journey. I can't even think of a challenging time. I mean, that's just been my blessing for this lifetime. But I think that the biggest challenge that happens is, it happens at the emotional level always. This idea that you cannot transform emotions into devotion. It's commotion. Yesterday we were listening to the Lavan, and the Guru, and when we're getting married before the Siddhi Guru Granth, it is all about the Guru Ramdas telling us that we have to understand that in that marriage, it is a marriage between three. It's between the two people that are getting married and the Guru. That is a triangle that brings strength to the marriage. And I think that any marriage that is being built in this triangle where there's infinity and this spirituality inside of this relationship, it becomes a very stable relationship. Because there's always a place where the two can go and bow. There's a place where both will leave their ego in the door, they'll check out their ego and be able to relate to each other from their soul. And if our relationship is just an ego relationship, it's just going to last as long as the ego gets excited about it. It's going to last as long as the sex is good. It's going to be it's going to work as long as my needs are being met. It's going to be working as long as everything that I'm lacking, the other person is bringing to me. But the moment that I feel fulfilled, I can, go somewhere else. So everything that comes through this process of the ego is just temporary. Doesn't last. Through creating this triangle and through both of us, being able to bow to the Guru, bow to God, bow to infinity, bow to our totality. It doesn't matter what happens here. Every time that our ego flares up, we can quickly rebalance the equation. We can quickly, because we have a priority, which is our spirit, our soul. So, not all relationships start like that. But all relationships should go in that direction and be working towards that. So when you're working in a relationship, you have to work out your inner problems and your mother phobia and your father phobia and all the crap that you're carrying from your past karmas and this past incarnation and this lifetime and whatever you're carrying. We have to work those things out. But the goal is to go beyond that. The goal really is to, in the process of getting man and woman, this feminine principle and masculine principle together, to bring them to togetherness, is to bring them to a space where there is no difference between man and woman. That is the ultimate place of this journey between male and female. It is back to the union of the totality. Ultimately, it is about being one with the other part. Not being separated, not competing, not confronting, not beating the other person up. But the question is, how do I merge with you? And by merging, I will know how to merge with God. You don't have to go look for God anywhere else. Look for God in your wife. And your wife, let her look for God in you. And I know that you can sit down and have a whole list of, I don't like this, I don't like this from her, and she doesn't like this from me, and you can create a whole list of all these things. That is where compassion comes in. Compassion tells you, throughout your whole process of incarnations, you were given the opportunity to come to this life and share it with this person. And you were brought these little challenges so that you can grow beyond those challenges and look at me after those challenges. That's why the yogi that had been meditating for 100 years, and God comes saying, he says, what do you want? You've been meditating on me so many years. So I want to be with you, O Lord. I want to unite with you. He says, fine. Then you have to reborn, get married, have kids, provide for them. And if in the middle of all that you can still remember me, you can come with me and be united with me. And that is exactly the process. We have to find God through each other. Otherwise, God does not exist. God is just an idea that does not exist unless we make it happen. To do that, we need to have character. To develop character, we need to have values. To have values, we need a teacher to teach us those values. And then we have to live those And if we can do that, we have this integrity. When you have integrity, you can face death front to front and tell him, get out of my way. That is what deathless means. You know, Yogi Ji would sometimes give meditations, and these meditations were to conquer death. And everybody, I'm going to do this meditation. I want to live 500 years. In reality, what he was talking to is, no, it's not about living longer. It is about living right. It is about living with integrity. So you have the strength of character that when you are speaking to death, you are defining the terms of the conversation. You know? When death comes comes in front of you and tells you, hey man, you have to go back to life. Hey, get out of my way. I'm going towards God. When death comes, tells you, hey, you know, there's no God. God does not exist. I am it. I'm the only reality. You say, hey, get out of the way. I'm going towards God. When death comes and tells you, everything is just material, man. You're dead. You're gone. It's over. So, death, please get out of my way. I'm going towards God. Then when death comes and tells you, I'm going to threaten you, I'm going to throw you I'm going to take you to hell. Says, you're welcome to try, but I'm going to God. You know. And that's the first step. Then you come to God. And God doesn't want to relate to you because He's absolute. And then you have to have the integrity and the values and the consciousness to tell God what He needs to do. God, I am your servant. I'm here to serve you. Silence. God, I am here to serve you. You know, be a God. You know, I am your slave. You know, Guru Nanak is doing this. Guru Nanak is defining God. I am your servant, God. You are everything. You're eternal. You're the infinite. I understand you're the big thing. But I am your servant, and you're going to let me serve you. I don't care what you say. Right? So this capacity to have this integrity, to go before God and define the terms of the game, is actually the capacity of a man to deliver. The capacity you have to deliver yourself, and in the process you can deliver many others. That is exactly what Yogi Bhajan did. He came down here. He defined it. He said, this is what God is, and God has to behave like this, and this is going to happen. It happened. Do we have that capacity as men? That is the real potency of a man. That is the real power of the man. Where does it start? He said, he had something really funny to say, you know. He says, there's nothing a woman can do to make me do something indecent. And that's where manhood starts. Now, just imagine, how many women believe that there's a man, you know, let's say a beautiful woman. How many beautiful women believe that there is probably a man, that there's men in this world that wouldn't go to bed with them if they wanted to? Probably none. Most women of stunning beauty probably know that almost anybody that they want, they can get into bed. Would you say it's true? And for the most part, it would be true. But that would not be a man. That woman would not feel realized. She would be having fun for a little while. She would be playing the man in her little ring. You know, enticing him with her beauty and with her sexiness and her sensuality. But she would know that he was just a little kid, not a man. Now imagine that if woman is the Adi Shakti, is the power of the universe, and substitute the word woman for man, and you say, there is nothing in this manifested universe that is going to entice me, that is going to provoke me to lose my center, to lose my integrity. That is when you start to be a man. How do we do this? You know, it takes some time to understand. At least, you know, maybe it took me a long time to understand it. I'm just going to put it like that. It took me a lot of pain, a lot of going through things to be able to understand that. But I'm sharing this with you because, you know, go for it. Don't be afraid of it. You know, when you're egocentric, you're vulnerable. You're vulnerable to the games of your own mind, of your own insecurity or your self-doubt and all these things. But when you're soul-centric, you become vulnerable only to God. That is why, like Ravitej was saying last night, this concept of Bao, of fear, of fearing God. It is that state of vulnerability where the only thing that you fear is God. It is an ultimate state of vulnerability. But there in that vulnerability lies a great strength. You know what strength is? What strength that is? In that vulnerability, supreme vulnerability. That's where the relationship and the intercourse begins. That is where, because that is the moment that you can have intimacy. Intimacy with God. Intimacy with a woman. There needs to be vulnerability in the relationship for it to be intimate. And to be intimate is to merge with the other person in complete trust. And to merge with the other person in complete trust is to love fully and unconditionally. So the road to go there needs to be vulnerable. You need to feel vulnerable. But what are you going to be vulnerable to? Your ego? That doesn't get you there. Are you going to be vulnerable to other people? That's not going to work either. The only thing is that you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable with the ultimate reality, which is God Himself. And then, man, go for the intercourse, the cosmic intercourse. We need to finish at 12:30. Sidi Amrit?
He's stepped out at the moment, but...
No, he's there.
Oh, where? What do we have on the schedule? 12:31. 12:30. Okay.
So the ultimate responsibility that we have as men is to deliver. And the ultimate responsibility that we have to deliver is to deliver ourselves with kindness and compassion. And it is only through that love and compassion that it comes from the heart that we can actually deal with our emotions and convert them into devotion. And that devotion is a state of vulnerability. It's a state where you say, God, I'm yours. Do with me whatever you want. Doesn't that the Guru say that? You want to use me as a mop? I am here. You want to kill me? I'm here. You want me to die of thirst? Hey man, let it happen. That, when you do that, is the first time in your life that you live fully for that moment. That is the first time you feel alive, even if it's just a last moment of thirst. You know, like today's Shabbat, talking about the thirst. That last moment of thirst is worth 3, 5, 1,000, 1,000,000 lifetimes. Even if it's just going to die for a few minutes, in a few minutes you're going to be dead. You understand the depth of the Guru and of this teaching. So what is there to fear? If that at the ultimate moment of vulnerability, when you have nothing left, when you have nothing done, where to go, at that moment you surrender yourself in such a moment that you just go into ecstasy, united with everything. If you live a soul-centered life, that is your ultimate fear, which is pretty cool with me. You know, what else? The ultimate fear in an egocentric life is nothingness, is being beaten by death. It is Kali, that space where we don't want to ever go, that dark goddess of nihilism, you know, where, hell, I'm never going to go into that hole. That space where everything's that happens that I never want to happen, that place of the ultimate nightmare that I'm trying to evade. That is the consequence of Kali. That is Kali, the darkness of the goddess of Maya, of this reality. So naturally, if we live an egocentric life, we're always bowing to Kali and say, "Oh, I don't want to lose my money. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose my life. I don't want to lose this." And it's a fear-based life. I have more. I feel better. I've achieved this. I'm recognized by everybody in society. I'm a great man. Until you face Kali again, because Kali will come back again. And you say, now that you cannot bring your riches with you, where are you? Now where you cannot bring your fancy titles and fancy recognitions, what is it with you? Where are you? So, my dear brothers, I think that's the choice. Either go in one direction, go in another direction, but those are the consequences. I find it that it's much more, it's just much more blissful, much more productive, much more ecstatic to live in that committed way. And it all starts by being committed. It all starts being committed to a woman with all her virtues and with all her defects. Look beyond that, because that's all just a show. Look to her soul and guide her soul and your soul into the infinite. Commitment, commitment, commitment. So let's do a little meditation to close the class that will let us build on commitment. Our left hand here is facing down. Our right hand is facing up. You notice it also has to do with the heart, this commitment. And we're going to do pranayama, which is inhaling in 8 parts and exhaling in 8 parts. Focusing on the tip of your nose. So it goes. And exhale. Continue. The next time you exhale, just keep the air out. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Inhale, hold your breath. Establish a commitment with yourself to live a soul-centric life. Exhale. Inhale deeply, hold. Commit to your significant other. Past, present, future, significant other. And deliver yourself and deliver her and deliver everybody that needs to come with you in this journey that starts with commitment. Exhale. Waheguru. So in a closing note, be aware of your emotions. That's where all begins. Solve them. Make them devotion. The most powerful and direct way of doing that is using Tantric Yoga. And if you don't have Tantric Yoga available, you can do the Kirtan Kriya. And there's many other things you can do. But do not let emotion, ill-guided emotion, corrode your inner being. Use it as fuel. Guide it with your meditative mind. And soar. And then you will be able to hit the target. Remember, women is the fuel in the rocket, and you are the guiding system. Both are needed to hit the target, which is infinite. So, with that note, let's go eat something and hit the target up the door, up there. Satnam. Vaheguru. You are love and the pure light within you. Guide your way on. Sat Nam. Vaheguru. Thank you for guiding me to finish delivering the class.